Okay.
This has been updated right here. The slides haven't been updated for a while, so we'll get on that. But worst case, this sheet's updated and in this doc.
Okay.
Shantae, can I ask, are you cool with people asking questions as we go, or do you want to just wait till after?
I'm good with questions. I do have the last slide as Q&A, but I would say I think this is more of a discussion than just presentation. So
Okay.
yeah, interrupt me, please.
If I have and if you guys have questions, don't want to like interrupt, throw it in the chat.
Yeah,
Cool.
perfect. So everyone can see my slides? Okay, thank you. Hello everyone. My name is Shantae, and I have spent 20 years helping businesses and brands under this umbrella in PR. And there's a lot of disciplines that fall under PR. There's about 10 different disciplines, but probably the most noteworthy is media. And so, what we're going to talk about today is media coverage. Because here's what I have learned: most businesses are approaching PR completely backwards because they're thinking like business owners when they need to think like journalists. So, today I'm going to show you what that means exactly, tactically. And then I'm going to give you a container of ideas that will help you see your own business, your own brand. And when I say business, I use it interchangeably with brand because you can be a business, but a brand of one. It's the same thing. So what I'll do is I'll give you this container of ideas that will help you see through your own stories to how to make them newsworthy stories so that you could be showing up in media. Sound good? All right. So, problem. This is what I see as the fundamental problem. A business owner gets excited about their new product launch, about any number of things, and they think, well, this is news. This is absolutely news. Everyone's going to be as excited as I am. They just need to hear about it. And then they pitch it to a journalist, and the journalist is thinking, so what? How does this matter to my readers? So there's this gap on why most pitches don't get responded to or even read, why press releases get ignored, why that spray and pray in terms of if you decide to do any of those pitches don't work because we're speaking entirely different languages. And we want to remedy that because it's really a very simple solution. Now, in this solution, I'm going to call it media first because that's kind of what's most prevalent right now. But if you think in terms of once you observe this, it's really human first principles. Everything we do with good news, which is my company. So when Armando's like, does anyone have good news? I'm like, I do. I do. I have a whole company of good news. This is where I want you to flip that script into media first thinking, but really it's human first thinking because media care about their audiences, which are a bunch of humans, which are all of us. So instead of asking, what do I want to say, start with what do journalists need to write about? And today I'm going to give you 14 different topics of what they want to write about. So when you understand their perspective, you understand their audience needs, your stories become what they're actively searching for anyway. So when you pitch them, they feel like, oh, you must know the business. You must know like what I'm out there for. So this is the entire framework. You don't have to copy all these down. I'll go through them one by one, but you can see that I've organized them across 14 categories and across two tiers. Now, tier one contains stories that journalists are actively hunting for. And these are stories that address what their audiences are talking about and what they're worried about. Tier two are what traditional business focused stories are all about. And these can work, but they really work best when they're positioned strategically. Most businesses will start and stay with tier two, very one dimensional tier two stories, but smart businesses will start with tier one, and brilliant businesses slash brands will start with tier one and then connect tier two to tier one impact. Make sense? Okay. So let's go into the first
What do you,
category
so,
in
wait.
tier one.
Sorry. So go back to that one slide real quick because I do have a question about that in terms of so tier one is sort of a broad category that people are like almost clickbaity type stuff, correct?
Not clickbaity. This is what journalists, beats, and bodies of work they're always looking for.
Yeah, I didn't mean clickbait as a like bad thing. I just meant clickbait in terms of things that people are actually interested in looking at, right?
Yeah, these are the stories that are always relevant and always resonating with audiences. So you'll see them in just about every publication.
And so what you're saying is with a tier one strategy, a brand, a business, a law firm should be focusing on tier one content first and then
Tier
roll into
one,
tier two.
tier one pitches. So when you're pitching the media and saying, hey, I'm a good source for you, here's what's happening, you want to speak in their language. So these are the types of stories that you would create pitches for.
Okay.
Wait,
Yeah.
Armando, can I follow up with that? So the question would be like, let's say you're pitching the story about Life on Bourbon, the new TV show. If you pitch it as a new TV show that you're shooting, so what? But are you saying if he pitches it because he's trying to redevelop New Orleans after the storms, after the horrible hurricanes, and he's trying to bring the film industry back to New Orleans, is that sort of moving it to a tier one with using a tier two story?
Yes, that is exactly what I mean. And that pitch is going to register to a journalist as to why they should care. The entire point of any type of pitch to any type of journalist, even podcast host, is to make a stranger care. So you have to meet them where they're at. You have to meet them where relevance to them is like immediate. They're like, I got to read the rest of this pitch. I want to know more. And then it's about timing. Like, oh, I just did a story on that exact same thing, which is not really likely with Life of Burden, but it would be, yes, that would fit within my beaten body of work. So new show is cool, but just like what Paul said, that is you connecting the dots to a tier one type of category. So immediately resonates. Well done. So I'm going to go through one of each of these categories, and it's going to be a lot to digest, but just really think of it through like these are just how journalists think. These are things that will start to create that layer of intelligence within your own, brainstorming. So category one within tier one would be economic impact and market signals. So these are the stories that they reveal how economic conditions are affecting businesses and communities at the ground level. So these would be providing, real world evidence of broader economic trends, of market performance, of financial indicators. And these are gold to journalists because journalists need to consistently explain economic data through really complex economic data through real examples. So you're living that every day in your business, whether you think you are or not. When you're struggling to find workers while unemployment statistics say jobs are scarce, that's a story. If supply costs are forcing you to raise prices, or if you're deciding to lower prices, that's a story. So you're not just sharing business news, you're providing economic intelligence. And there's a way for you to be part of that conversation if you wanted to. Now, at this point, you're probably wondering, well, how do I even do research on this? So for today, I won't be able to go in depth in how to research, but research is where you're going to get a ton of clarity and a ton of specificity. And this is going to help your pitch become really pithy and powerful. So all of our pitches at Good News, they are under 200 words. That is like the gold standard when it comes to an initial pitch. And then you have up to 2 follow-ups for that. So there are 2 tools that I know and love that I can recommend to you. These will help you research and validate these stories. These are going to help you understand what audiences are already talking about so you could reverse engineer it versus trying to come up with it off the top of your head. The first one is SparkTuro. SparkTuro was created by Rand Fishkin, who originally made Moz. And Moz is like the SEO standard. And he left that company. He wrote a book about it. He started SparkTuro. In the last 2 years, he's been very verbal about his hot take of PR as the future of marketing in a lot of ways. He's a really interesting character. But he created SparkTuro so that you could start to see what audiences are talking about. So if you're curious where people are going, including the podcasts that your audiences are consuming it, you'll find them on SparkTuro. You're going to be able to look at topics like economic conditions. You're going to be able to see not only what people are talking about conversationally, but where they're talking about it across all media categories.
I got a question for
Armando.
So because I know Ryan over here, he's working. We just kind of settled on a brand for him because he wants to
Mhm.
sort of target the NIL and how these influencers are, or athletes getting money, and he wants to help them with their tax strategy, right?
Mhm.
So as we're building his brand, should we be thinking about the media implications, I guess on that tier one, list, where when we're creating content on social media, that it could eventually maybe get picked up by some sort of news outlet? Is that a strategy that you're talking to people about?
A ton, because when Rand Fishkin says PR is the future of marketing, what he means is the way that people are consuming and sharing content has changed. So direct attribution, like direct SEO attribution, it has completely changed because now we have what's called dark social. People are sharing differently. They're sharing in ways that cannot be attributed. The way things are ranking in terms of Google search and the SERPs have completely changed because of AI. What they are finding, and this is where Rand Fishkin says PR is the future of marketing, is those authoritative websites like news publications are still ranking higher than almost any other type of content strategy, including your own content strategy. So if you want to, like when we talk about at Good News, we say we engineer omnipresence. We mean that. Not only are we able to be considered by third party validation, which are journalists, which are podcasts, which are other people's audiences that we're borrowing, that we don't have to create ourselves. We're creating content with them that we don't have to edit, that we just show up for an interview and then they go do all this amazing work for us that we can atomize, and then we can just canvas entire industries with these great killer topics that then AI is going and like choosing to surface in AI search. So yes, all that to say, I would absolutely do that. Sarah.
You just brought up AI, so immediately like that's where my brain went of the fact that for anything now, I feel like my first reaction is to search on ChatGPT rather than regular old Google, right?
Yeah.
So how
Yeah.
does this as a I might be getting ahead of myself or in this presentation, but how does really focusing on this strategy or where you're researching like play in this new world of searching on AI?
So I think the first thing with AI is you think, well, how can I scale? How can I use AI to then generate all these ideas and then turn them into pithy pitches? And at Good News, like the whole impetus of Good News was I thought I was going to leave the PR world. I thought after the pandemic, I'm like, I've seen it all. I literally had to work through crisis situations that were unprecedented first. Having a CEO that chose to get her business insights from a medium, having to call the FBI to get huge sums of money returned to us from said medium. Pandemic, everything. I was like, okay, I did the thing. I was in PR. And then AI emerges. And so this framework that I had been using for 20 years with the application of AI and other productization became really exciting again. So we have tried everything when it comes to AI and building out visibility systems, intelligence systems specifically for this type of end result, earned media. And the AI application comes after the research. So you can certainly create agents that do all this deep research into these topics. And once you know these topics, it becomes so much easier. Just be like, yeah, really focus your efforts here. Surface up everything that people are talking about, everything they're not talking about, what my competitors, how they're showing up. You start to get an idea of journalists, their beats, their bodies of work, their audiences, and you can compile all of that. The pitches, though, cannot be AI generated. Not really. The pitches need to be incredibly specific to the journalist, to their beat, their body of work, and their audience. So that is where using AI to scale on the back end, it's not going to work the way you think it's going to work. But certainly you can scale all of that research. The human first principles is super important because you are building relationships and you're building relationships with hardened journalists. Podcasts are different. Podcast hosts, they're just like a dream to work with. Tell everyone, start with podcasts. You'll have a great experience. Journalists are hard. So that first pitch needs to be pithy and powerful. But if you do that, they consider you a source and like you've made it. But I could go on and on about AI. There's so many different systems with that. But yes, absolutely test things with AI, refine that voice, create a voice, all that things. So the second tool that I would recommend, and if you're going to just invest in one tool, it's BuzzSumo. BuzzSumo is a tool that you usually see in digital marketing. I love this tool more than any other PR tool I've ever seen. This will help you know any number of things. It's going to be the stories that are performing well. It's going to help you identify the journalists who are covering said stories across all categories, across all types of publications. It's going to tell you about trends. It's going to tell you about seasonality when it comes to stories. Like there's ways that you're always going to be part of a news cycle. Use BuzzSumo. It has just an immense amount of different tools within it that will help you with that in terms of research. So that's all I'll say with the research. I am happy to have sidebar conversations, of course. So next category within that tier one is going to be social and cultural shifts. And these are the stories that illustrate how society and workplace dynamics and generational differences and values and cultural norms are evolving. So these are about showing tangible examples of broader social transformations. So these are stories that are powerful to journalists because everyone feels these changes. But they're not always easy to articulate. So right now we're seeing how three generations are working differently. Okay, boomer to the Gen Zs who are quiet quitting. We're all adapting new mental health awareness. We now have a mental health awareness month. We see businesses that are incorporating mental health into benefits packages. We're watching environmental concerns change buying decisions. So these aren't business observations exclusively, they're cultural intelligence that most brands and businesses have a perspective on. And if you have evidence of what you're sharing, even anecdotal, journalists are actively looking for these stories. Got it?
Are they going to want numbers and data, and like,
If you have them, yes. If you don't, it's still a really compelling story.
can you give me an
You have to
example?
consider that all journalists they have their beat, but then they have deadlines. So they're consistently looking for new, fresh stories and takes. And of course, evidence that's empirical is always helpful, but honestly, it's the stories that are just told throughout like the course of business that are just as impactful. And it's just that's one news cycle. If you have white papers, they're not going to consume and then give an entire white paper to their audience. So they're literally looking for like maybe two stats. So if you help them connect those stats because you've done that research, even if it doesn't come specifically from you, it's just part of your evidence of why this story is important. That's helpful.
Are you going to talk about newsjacking here today or no?
I could.
I didn't know if it was part of your presentation or not.
It's not part of this, but like really, I can go through the 14 categories. But if you want me to talk about newsjacking, I have a download that I can share with everyone.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool. Be great.
Okay,
Do you guys know what
get.
newsjacking means, by the way? You want to tell them what it means real quick?
Yeah, it's being able to investigate trends that are already happening out there, and then basically finding your way to be part of that conversation. And you can reverse engineer a lot of those things.
Paul does a really good job of that. If you guys are following Paul, Paul is the master at newsjacking.
Not on purpose.
No, I got you. Yeah, but
Not,
it works. You know what I mean? Like it's what's trending and commenting on it keeps things fresh and in perspective. So
well, because everybody's watching the same thing, or at least most of us are watching the same thing. Doesn't matter what network you're on. And if you can provide a voice to that story, they've already told you, the media's already told you what they find important. Not that I think what the media finds important is important, but the media has said, this is important, so we're all covering it from a different angle. So if you talk about that, it's obviously on everybody's mind and everybody's got an opinion. Right or
Yes.
wrong, like you don't have to like something. It's just unfortunately the way it works.
Yeah. Yeah, so once you understand how journalists look at stories within this container, I'll pull up the news jacking. It's a download that you guys can go through, and it takes you through an exercise, and it's just having that point of view and like what that would look like and how to refine that. And then that's what you're pitching.
Can I ask you, do you separate out, and I don't want to say this the wrong way, journalists from uh, pundits or talking heads? Like, I don't view anybody on Fox or CNN as journalists. They are talking heads for a specific point. Do you guys separate out journalists from like kind of one-sided, the pundits for a topic? Is a Charlie Kirk a journalist, or is he an agenda-driven whatever? And do you guys separate that out?
Right. So like the pundits usually have a producer or a team of producers. And so I consider the producer before I do the talking head.
Okay.
And in that way, I am taking the same approach. It's much more traditional. So I started out in broadcast journalism way back when. I had that whole evolution before I got my master's in PR. So there is a little bit of that framework that carries over. Like I know what they're talking about. I know how they're brainstorming or the lack of brainstorming. I know the one-sided arguments. I know what's happening across those boards, but they're always looking for ideas. So if you come across as someone that they're like, okay, you guys did the thinking for me, that's helpful. But yeah, those big talking heads always have producers. Those are the ones I usually aim to charm. So next category. So technological disruption. So these are stories that demonstrate actual practical impact of technology changes on daily business operations, AI, everything AI right now. It's also job roles, customer behavior, industry practices. And this is, it can be with the hype, but really beyond the hype, practical application. So these stories work because everyone is trying to understand what AI and what all these changes really mean. So if you're the one actually implementing them, if you're dealing with cybersecurity threats, if you're training workers on new systems, if you have real world data on what works and what doesn't, this is exactly what journalists at a very frequent pace need to talk about in big ways. So big tech trends, making those relatable through a business story, that's like gold right now, especially with journalists. This one is not for everyone, but certainly you can participate in these regulatory and policy impacts. So these are stories that show how new laws, regulations, policies, tariffs, compliance requirements are affecting real businesses. So that it's revealing, practical consequences of government decision or governing bodies. These
So,
are go
sorry.
ahead.
So right now, immigration attorneys should be all over this, right?
I
Like
would
if they
hope.
really want to be found.
I would hope, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, these are ways that you could be of value to them because I mean, you're busy, right? You're busy in the business of your business. But sales velocity increases when you're suddenly authority that's being quoted
Yeah.
on these very prevalent policies. If you become, invaluable to journalists, journalists will come back to you because they are consistently, constantly needing to explain how abstract government decisions affect real people and businesses. And there's always multiple takes on that. If you want to be hyper controversial, most of my clients, they want to steer pretty clear of policy impact and politics in general. Some of them are like, nope, put me in coach. But it's everything from new tax laws. Journals, they need businesses that can explain what it actually means in practice. Environmental regulation change. I'm working with a client right now that they're in manufacturing, but they do a ton in wastewater. So they're able to be part of those conversations, those relevant conversations. Um, so if you could be one that can show the real cost and the innovation it drives, and you're not just complaining about red tape, you're providing civic education through your story. And these are the stories that help voters understand real world consequences of policy decisions. This is exactly what journalists are always looking for to serve their audiences. So, crisis response and resilience. Think of all of 2020 and beyond. We're still talking about the impact of COVID, but these are stories that detail how businesses and individuals and communities have responded to, have recovered from significant challenges and disasters or unexpected disruptions. It seems like we see a lot of these with shootings. We see a lot of these with like natural disasters more than anything. Um, but there's other types of stories that you can always be a part of. These are pure gold for journalists because everyone wants to know, how would I handle that? How, your audience is constantly worried about potential disruptions. In business, it's supply chain failures, it's cyber attacks, it's economic downturns, it's losing key people. So when you can share how you've actually navigated those challenges, you're providing a roadmap others can follow. And they aren't just business war stories, they're, practical insights for preparedness. And these are things that journalists, I mean, it's pretty interesting in the news cycle. And journalists are always asked to cover these, so it helps them serve their audience's fundamental curiosity, but also their fundamental need to feel more secure and prepared. Category 6, so this is the last one in this tier 1. These are hot. Future predictions and early indicators. So these are stories that are, current business observations and data patterns to help forecast upcoming trends, changes, developments that can affect industries or communities. So these are, I would say, one of the most powerful categories because journalists are constantly trying to help audiences stay ahead and they want to be the first. Journalists are very competitive and like, I want to be the first to talk about this.
Question
So
for
if
you.
you,
Sorry.
yeah,
I just
don't apologize.
yeah,
It's great.
I is this something that your company does? Like will it take somebody and go, hey, this is how we can sort of brand you and push you out to these places. Is that something that you guys do?
Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit of high level good news. So we say we're not a PR agency, but we are a PR company. Because we build this as a visibility intelligence system. And what that means practically is we go do all this research and then we mobilize it into a turnkey solution. And what we create are brand engines. So all these things I'm talking about, this is just one part, about 10 parts of what we build for a brand. And a brand can be a business, a brand can be a person. A lot of our clients are corporations with executive teams. So we build these as engines that are constantly running and serving up all of these insights. This is where we do use AI to like go out there, vet these things, bring them to me in real time. And I want you to package them up in a way that it's like as close to a pitch as feasibly possible in real time. So every week, these brand engines are just going, going, going. And so you're able to capitalize on something that is breaking news, before trends, seasonality. We have about a dozen different what we call overlays for stories. And we do this very customized. These brands are customized to the person, to the brand. So we have a pretty immense intake, but then after that, it's like those are running. Yeah, that's a great question. So when it comes to future predictions, early indicators, this is probably what's going to position you as a thought leader. And this isn't just like, oh, it's coming in 2026. Think every quarter, think every type of cycle you can think of in business. It's almost happening on a weekly basis when it comes to AI, daily basis, honestly. This is where if you have predictions and indicators and like solid point of view, I would start here if I were to be
Armando,
calling
maybe we
them.
could use this to get me on the news and talk about how all of our PI clients are going to be out of business at some point. Probably wouldn't
Yeah.
be good. About how technology is changing the game in personal injury and how
Yeah.
it's happening right now. It's scary. Every time I talk about it to our clients, they don't want to talk about it.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone's hot take right now is something is dead. So and so is dead. I wouldn't hit that on the nose because everyone's saying it. But if you have a way to predict and have an indicator of future proof in a way that's like, hey, here's what we predict, and also here's what we suggest, solution wise. Yeah, this is a great way to position yourself as a thought leader. So these are the tier one categories. And if you spent most of your time on these types of stories, you're doing media pitching thing better than, and I'm so sad to say this, 90% of PR professionals. So you're hitting beats, you're hitting bodies of work, you're hitting audience preferences. And if you can demonstrate that inside a media pitch, then a journalist will respond favorably and they'll consider you a strong source. So even if it's not a perfect fit for that time, the timing's off, they're still going to consider you as someone that, okay, when they send me the next email, I'm going to open it. That's what we're trying to do. You're building relationships from that first pitch. So if you had to take any time, I would say consider what's one future prediction you could make right now. What's one social cultural type of story that you could talk about right now from the perspective of your business, then you're doing the thing. So moving into tier two, these are business focused stories. These are not bad stories, but they are secondary priority because they focus on your company right on the nose rather than broader issues journalists are actively covering. However, as we've already discussed, if you can strategically position yourself through the tier one impact, then you can tell these stories. Local media loves community connection. Trade publications care about industry achievements. So these are stories that do help build relationships with journalists. But the mistake that businesses make is they think, I'm going to write a press release about this exciting new product I'm launching, and it's going to do the thing. And you have not connected any of those dots. So the golden rule is always try to connect tier two stories to tier one themes for impact.
So if I want to get it, so I'm doing my screening for this show on Bourbon Street on
Yeah.
August 16th. So I should, if I want like the media to cover it and to come out, then I have to the better way to get them to come out and do a story on it and invite me to the TV and all of that is to figure out tier one and tier two topics that it
Yeah.
can connect with.
Yeah. Something that's, and you don't have to like wax poetic about this, really. Your pitch is going to be 200 words. It's going to have a short intro on like what it is or who you are. And then it's going to connect it to their audience for them. And really, for a lot of times with screenings and events, having that invite is, I mean, you can say like, yep, this is an excuse to touch base with you as I want to invite you to personally come. But I would say if you can add to that, here's why it would matter to your audience based on what I know about your audience. That shows that you've done the homework on them. And journalists are forever angry because no one seems to know their audience. Everyone is acting very self-servingly. So they get 100 pitches a day. And I would say almost all of them are just like, oh, yeah, I'm really important. You should do a story on me. So really, you're just showing up in a way that is totally different. And that's going to make a big difference. Okay, let's go into these. Try to breeze through these, but you'll see some similarities. Or you'll probably see some immediate ways that tier one is could be infused into this. But innovations, breakthroughs. So these are stories about new products, services, processes, technologies that your company has developed. And these are going to be particularly those that solve problems, improve efficiencies, do something, right? Remarkable. And where these become breakthrough, where these address problems beyond your company, is where they become stories that journalists care about. So you want to make sure you take that extra step of like, this is really cool, but this is why this is really cool beyond our company. So if you have developed something that could transform your entire industry, that's newsworthy. If it solves an environmental challenge, no matter how small, or a social issue, even better, that's a news story. The key is to show impact beyond your bottom line. And your innovation becomes news when it represents progress for others and not just profit for you. So you want to make sure that you take that mental exercise through. The next one is growth and expansion. So these are about business growth, new locations, increased workforce. I see new CEO, revenue milestones, market expansion, scaling operations. So these would matter when they reflect broader economic conditions or they create community impact. So if you're hiring during a recession, that's an economic news. If you are expanding when others are contracting, we see these types of stories where through the pandemic, we saw CEOs give more pay and take less pay for themselves. These signal market confidence. If your growth creates substantial jobs or investments, that's community news or industry news. So your growth becomes newsworthy when it tells a larger story about economic health or opportunity. Next one, awards and recognition. So my biggest pet peeve is when businesses get awards and they literally treat it like a trophy instead of a tool. They just announce that they got the award and that's it. That's all they did. Certainly honors, rankings, acknowledgments of your company, your products, your executives. These are that are from industry organizations or institutions. These are newsworthy when they represent first, when they validate industry leadership, when they recognize community contribution. So being the first in your region to earn a new certification, that creates precedent. Winning recognition during a challenging time shows resilience. Community service awards, they demonstrate business leadership beyond your profit. So they do matter if you position them as a standard setter, not just an achievement, not just literally a trophy you put on your wall. Product launches. So I don't know that too many of you actually have like on the nose products, but these are new offerings, services, product releases, things that you would focus on feature, benefits, maybe marketing position. These do become news, especially in trade publications where they address market gaps or they can address social needs. You create a service or something for disability, then that would be a story that you tell. If your product serves an underserved population in general, that's a great news story. If it represents an industry first, that's an innovation news. If it reflects broader market trends, that's business intelligence. So your product does matter when it solves problems for people beyond your target customers. So tell those stories. Partnerships and collaborations, these are alliances, these are our joint ventures, these are business partnerships, they're collaborative projects, yes, with influencers. Your company, has that it's formed with other organizations, other types of business entities. These work when the collaboration creates something bigger than the sum of its parts. So competitors working together could signal industry maturity. We have university partnerships that advance research. We have nonprofit collaborations all the time that address social issues. We have international partnerships that enable innovation transfer. So the partnerships become news when they represent progress through cooperation and usually beyond business development, but you can still tell that story. Oops. Next one, company milestones. These are achievements, anniversaries, numerical benchmarks, noteworthy moments in your company. I'm working with a company right now that's coming up on 100 years. It's definitely a milestone. So we are ramping up to tell that story and then to tell that story beyond 2026 and on and on and on. Because they're also an employee-owned company, which they've evolved to over 100 years. So there's all these layers where that story, we're going to keep it alive for years and years to come. These usually reflect broader context. So 25-year anniversary during industry disruptor. This shows adaptability. It could be reaching profitability during a recession. It could be becoming a community institution, that you spend your Saturdays, volunteering to projects in the community. So those milestones become newsworthy when they illustrate business durability, when they illustrate community value, not just that company achievement. And there's dozens, as I'm learning, just doing this exercise for that company, there's dozens upon dozens of stories that make sense with every news cycle out there. Community impact, same, but different. So these are charitable activities. These are volunteer efforts. These are local community involvement. These would be social responsibility initiatives. These will be philanthropic contributions. This is when your work addresses real local needs and creates measurable change. It improves the dynamic out there. So volunteer programs, it could be, you shot a pilot and you're going to be talking about a local type of situation. You're using actors from the community. You're telling a story about a community. You're identifying things like housing shortages or alleviating those, education gaps, environmental issues. The key is showing results and providing a model for others to follow. And what matters is that it has a civic responsibility baked into it. And from that has lasting positive change. I think we're coming. So I have one more after this. So executive leadership. Actually, no, this is the last one. Executive leadership. So this is where having those personal brands, I think, is important. We are in the day and age of the celebrity CEO. And I don't just mean just CEO, I mean executives, I mean personal brands. This is how Gen Z are making buying decisions. They want to like the brand, they want to like their missions, but they also want to like the people running the company. So these are stories that focus on your leadership, on their backgrounds, on their management philosophies. What would their TED Talk be about? What their career journey was, what their business insights are, what their personal perspectives are, especially when it comes to industry matters. So this is when your leadership stories work to offer unique insights to broader business challenges. If your CEO has an unconventional background or a management approach, that's super interesting. If you're seeing trends that others are missing because you've gone about business in a different way, that's valuable. If you're leading community business initiatives, or if you're building a tribe of different types of people, because of your background, that's leadership news. So your executives become newsworthy because they provide those perspectives. And how many times do we see leadership panels? How many times do we see those celebrity CEO types? They are the voice. They are the ones navigating change for big companies and small companies, but they put them on the map. So that's a wrap on tier 2. But here's how to make it work. You want to always connect tier 1 to tier 1 themes. You want your product launch to become economic news. When it addresses market disruption, you want your awards to become social news. When it recognizes diversity and leadership, you want your partnerships to become technology news because it advances innovation. So the success formula is tier 2 story, tier 1 context equals media interest. And that's what transforms company news into valuable journalism. Everything else is about the scale of pitches, about timing. But if you do these things, you're nailing the other biggest component, which is relevance. You can always speak to relevance, and that's where most pitches miss the mark.
So, question.
Yeah.
Is this a long game strategy? Is this something that people can expect, results from pretty quickly? Can you maybe talk about that?
Yeah, so our timing is we build everything in 3 weeks, but certainly before that, before I had these systems in place, I was doing this as a solo human for brands and with a little bit of a team. So my go-to is always to launch a pitching pipeline within 3 weeks. I don't want to be laborious in that. I want pitches out the door so I can start learning fast. Yes, you can start landing features almost right away, especially if you front load with like podcasts. Because podcasts always need long form guest experts, which
Yeah.
Production times are different for podcasts. So you could start landing those, but it will be a month sometimes until you actually sit down and do I'm going to admit someone that's asking to come in. Okay.
Oh, it's Becky.
Um, so yes, you can do this fast and you can start landing things pretty fast. If
Um,
you're launching something local, don't wait until the day before.
right, right, right. So it depends on, I guess it depends on the product and the service that you're trying to get out. Because like a launch of some kind could potentially be a six-figure, maybe seven-figure, endeavor,
Yeah.
depending on what's going out, right?
Yeah. And if you're trying to be part of something like, let's take Mental Health Awareness Month, which is March, yeah, you're going to probably want to start pitching um, February, probably January for stories like that.
Yeah. Have you
You want to get on on board with journalists before that.
what type of results have you seen from somebody that started a PR strategy and how did that is it translatable into revenue or ROI? How can you track that? Is that something more like a branding tool?
No, so what I can send people, and including the trend jacking, is literally earned media into money. This is where people get they get hung up. So distribution or attribution specifically is different for earned media. But attribution across the board is, I would say, it's not what it used to be. Everyone's like, oh yeah, last touch, first touch, whatever. But you can translate earned media into money and bottom line value, especially if you think about it as content creation. Almost everything that you're creating is really high quality content. But on top of that, it's validation from a third party. So if you think of every feature, every podcast, um, every quote as something that you can then atomize on your own and amplify, and you can amplify through any number of tactics, including traffic stacking. That is what we mean is like that's the full system of engineered omnipresence.
Yeah.
And it's content that ranks really well. So you have the organic value. You can put it on your website, your social, everywhere.
How
But
much money should somebody be allocating to PR that, on a monthly basis that, on the low end is going to get you some results, but then like on the high end, rocket fuel and, really just putting the pedal to the metal?
yeah, so if you were to try to onboard with an agency, and I have all sorts of hot takes on why the PR agency model is broken, mainly because they gatekeep. Their bread and butter is that Rolodex, but you don't know if that Rolodex is across multiple industries, how they're spreading that across their clientele, whether they have 100 clients or two clients. But you could expect to spend with an agency starting 15 to 20K per month. And certainly they would be helping you get started faster. I don't think they would cover all the media categories being podcast, industry, local, digital, and top national. Um, if you were to DIY it, we do have a course and it's my entire frame. You could also get the book, PR Power Plate. That's my framework. It's just going to be the long haul of setting up your own DIY process, but you could do that starting tomorrow for next to nothing.
This is a
I
book.
tell you, yeah, it's my book. So
Nice. Put up
yeah,
a link to it in the chat.
I will. I will.
Right.
But PR it is expensive. It's more expensive than you would spend. Like you could get a freelancer, but I venture to say the freelancer probably wouldn't be able to scale it. You'd be really underwhelmed with the results, is what I usually hear from people.
Right.
Um, but if you have the knowledge of what I'm even talking about today, you know how to hire an agency differently. You can ask them the hard-hitting questions. I think the part with PR is there's this mystique to it. So people are hiring based on a scope of work that they don't quite understand. So they think they're paying a large sum of money. 15K to 20K is a large sum of money for most solopreneurs. And then by Q1 or 6 months later, they're just completely underwhelmed by the results. you
So what are
could
the results that you
technically,
can expect?
what kind of results?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, it's a little bit here. So industry average for open rates is usually 4%. What we're seeing with good news in our system is 20 to 25%. And those are response rates of yes, I'd like to talk to you. So like we use our own model. In any given week, I have 10 different media interviews just for myself. 4 or 5 of those are podcasts because I really like podcasts.
Right.
Other categories, industry, local, all of those things. That's probably pretty remarkable. I wouldn't expect that from an agency necessarily,
And
but that's
obviously, is this something that I could, and anybody here could go, all right, I'm going to spend 15, 20K a month for the next 3 months. Is that something that I could keep for like the rest of 2025? Or is this something that I should be doing on a monthly basis? Because I feel like if I get on CNN or if I get on Forbes or if I get, on these like big publications, I could throw it on to my website, right? And go,
yeah.
yeah, featured on all of these news publications or whatever, right? At that point, doesn't it already kind of carry the weight, or would you say I would have to continue doing it?
So I'm going to have a very like my perspective is always on is best. um, Mainly because it's a lot of work to set this up and start pitching. So you might as well all create it in a system that it's going as automated as possible, which is only going to happen if you're doing it.
Right.
So you get better systems for getting pitches out the door. You start to respond to them. You start to turn those into content. But certainly there's those companies where you've seen them where they're like, well, yeah, we'll get you on all these publications for $97, Those aren't features. They call them features, they're not features. But that's certainly where people's minds are. They're like, man, I just want to get something really fast. I want to launch it. There is some perceived value in that, but from people who like me, I would say there's more fallout when it comes to those types of things. So as a PR professional, I'm going to say it's good to be always on. Um, but I do also think that, and that my hypothesis is that you could potentially, most brands of one could potentially get the type of exposure they need and validation through podcasts. If they focused all their efforts on podcasts, my working theory right now is that's you're getting 80% of what you would ever need from earned media.
And if you niche down and you're talking to the right people, right? And I've been on my soapbox about that. But if you niche down and you know who you're talking to, then you can get on the right podcasts, right? And talk to the right people when you have your podcast. And then that way you can, scale and grow 10 times as quick.
And it's all leverage. I mean, if you start getting on podcasts within your industry and canvassing those, then you can start using that as leverage for bigger deal podcasts. If you were John Lee Dumas, everyone's like, how do I get on Rogan? I'm like, well, Rogan comes to you. Rogan's producers come to you because you're everywhere.
There you go.
So you don't really pitch Rogan and then get on Rogan. But yeah, there's ways to leverage the work that you do.
Nice. Questions? I know I've been asking a lot.
Sorry to jump on late.
Oh, good.
My AC's out and it's hot here.
Oh, dude, that's the worst. So for those of you that are showing up late, how dare you, first of all. Yeah, so we've been talking about PR, Shante? I thought it was
Shante. Shante.
All right.
Yeah.
Corrected. I have been corrected. Shante. So Shante has been talking about PR and her company and, the different tactics on like newsjacking and, the different tiers. And obviously this is recorded so you guys can have access to this. Some really cool shit. Sorry. A friend of mine who's in my flight club. I know, I'm sorry, baby. In my flight club mastermind has a company called Customer Hub. And so the Customer Hub is a place where I can put in all of the videos, and the directory is going to be in there. So it'll be really clean, easy to use, user friendly. So all of these recordings will be up on Customer Hub so that you guys can consume it. So it'll be really cool. So any questions about PR? And
You
obviously,
put the book link in there?
Yeah, let me put it
Really great, by
in
the way.
chat.
Thank you.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
awesome. And if you, Shantae, if you send me an email with everything, what I'll do is I'll send everybody a follow-up recap email with the recording, and then any downloads or anything like that you guys can provide.
Yeah, I'll send the one on trend jacking on earned media into money.
Love it.
At a high level, trend jacking, you could just start with hashtags. You can find out like hashtags and reverse engineer those types of stories. You usually have to be fast. Trend jacking is timely. So it's almost guaranteed if you have a point of view and you're just immersed. So it's definitely one way to just be part of news cycles.
Yeah. I love the whole concept on like the tier one stuff. And I think we'll start implementing that into our clients' branding so that there is also another level and another, sort of way to reach out to news and just creating their content that not only is specific for their target market, but it's more broad where it could get picked up by somebody else. So that's something that I really took from it, which
Good storytelling, just good storytelling is understanding audiences and then demonstrating that you do. And that's what journalists are, like what they do.
yeah, love it. Any other questions, y'all? All right. So we got any hot seats? People struggling with something? Maybe they want to meet somebody, or everything's perfect and nobody has any problems whatsoever. I'm assume everybody's perfect since everybody's perfect. There's no problems at all.
I'll just throw in there, Armando, just so we're here. I had Bob Simon connect me with the folks, so I'm trying to set up a meeting. I need to bring you into that for like a podcast booth.
Oh, sweet deal. Love it. Love that. I'm gonna send you our live conference proposal because I want to talk to him about us coming in and shooting his conference too. That'd be great. Go High Level is having a conference in Dallas in October, and I think we're gonna get it. I think we're picking that
That's
business.
sweet. That's awesome.
It's been good, man. I'm going to Cabo this week. A friend of mine, he runs a mastermind called Flow. His name is Charles Bird. Really cool dude. I'll introduce you guys to him if you guys want the connection. But his deal is all JV partnerships. Like his company's called Pure JV, and that's all he does is just create like joint ventures with everybody that he brings into the mastermind. So like his guarantee is, bring $500,000 worth of business in a weekend. So, so I'll whatever I learn over there, I'm bringing it over here and sharing it with you guys. So as soon as I get that info, I'll share it for sure. Guys, this is what I will say. This is what I'm gonna say. Ryan Hughes, right? Who was here? He's not here right now, but met Candace. She was on the podcast. She introduced me to Ryan Hughes. Ryan comes on the podcast, does a podcast with Dean Friday. We bring them onto a help conversation, right? Not a sales conversation, a help conversation. And I think wording here is important because and it's fine. Look, sales is sales, right? And some people are like, just be unapologetic about it, and that's fine. But I like the word help, right? Because like if we can help, right? If Shantae says, "Hey, I can help you blow up your business with PR," then she's the who to the how, right? So if we're the who to the how, then we can help. And so Ryan, we met with him, found out what his pain points were. He was trying to figure out how he can use his tax strategies. And he was like, well, I can do this for businesses and we do lending, for different businesses. We kept talking, figured out that he really wanted to get into the NIL space, right? And he wants to build his personal brand and his authority and content and all of that. And we're like, dude, we could absolutely help you with that, right? If we couldn't, we'd be, super transparent about that too. Be like, look, man, probably not our lane, maybe talk to somebody else, but we're absolutely in the position to help you. We can help you. This is how much it costs. Send them a proposal, and we're going to be working together. Why do I say this? Podcasting, guys, and the whole reason why this mastermind exists is because that's the strategy, right? Like you create podcasts, you put out your organic social, you build your personal brand, and you have that client journey together. And the people you start meeting and you put that system into place in your business, and you will grow like that. Like that. Guaranteed. And I'll tell you, snap your fingers just like that. But it's guaranteed. Why? Because sales is a math problem. Sales is a math problem. That's it. Right? So if you guys can start thinking about that and going, okay, just like Shantae was talking about, how do we reverse engineer? How many people do we need to talk to in order to get the sales? Right? Then now you know that number. Increase the amount of podcasts that you have, talk to the right people, open up those referral partnerships, and now you're off to the races, right? And if you niche it down, which I've spoken about too, stop being so broad about who you serve. Find that vertical and just explode that vertical, and then move on to another vertical, and then move on to another vertical, because it doesn't really take that much to make 7 figures, right? You just got to hit that, just got to hit that one vertical over and over and over again. And, as Shantae was saying, be the, be in that space as the authority, and people, your reputation will precede you. And then once you get to that help conversation, it's not even a question of whether or not you can help. It's just whether or not they have the pain, and can you solve that pain, right? And then the authority, credibility, and trust is not even a question in that conversation. So, no hot seats. Nobody wants to meet anybody. I can open
No, I
up.
was going to say, I like that. How you always say you're focusing on like whoever you're bringing on the podcast isn't necessarily your client, but someone that is a high referral person, so that you're getting a bulk action out of that person you're bringing on versus I can close this one client because I brought that one person on. I'm
Right.
aiming at the one person that has a plethora of referrals that's going to come from that one versus I can do a bunch of podcasts and hopefully get a close out on one of these clients versus I just put 20 people as a referral from this one person I had a podcast with.
100%. And to your point, right? We were talking to Ryan, and I'm trying to figure out, okay, I'm like, what's your offer? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? Who are you trying to meet? And then we got to the NIL piece. And the minute he started talking about NIL, I was like, oh, well, I know Chris Brown, I know Maritza, I know all of these different people that are in that space that I can introduce him to that already have the social currency. Immediately, he brings them to the podcast and he's off to the races, right? But if he didn't have the niche and he was just so broad, be like, well, I don't really know how to help you. And I know people in the EOS community have always been like, well, my target market is $5 million visionaries. And I'm like, how do you know how much somebody's making? You don't. That's not a niche, right? Entrepreneurs that make $5 million a year and up is not a niche. So that's my soapbox. Niche it down, please niche it down. Anyone else?
I'll just add to that. For me, like I had 2 podcast recordings today, and one was a truck accident lawyer, which is a potential client, and the second one was a chiropractor that has a network of medical professionals, and he teaches medical professionals and works with lawyers, PI, to train them on how to better document things and make sure the cases are not negatively affected, I guess, if you will. So huge network. He's in with Bob Simon. He's got tons of PI firms. And so referral partner versus potential client. So you can mix it up and not have just all your prospects on versus, like DeLacy. DeLacy's been on my show. And she refers me uh clients. And so, but she's got a wealth of knowledge in the legal space and referrals, but DeLacy's not my client, right? So I would say, you can get creative with it and mix it up. You just want to have great content and we're good referral partners, and you can do both. You don't have to just stick to one thing. So
Yeah. I love what Sarah just said in here too, is being clear about what you don't do. You want to pop in and talk about that, Sarah, real quick?
Yeah, something that we've found so helpful. Our philosophy around like building these referral partnerships is really giving them a clear picture of when they go out into the world, when they go to a mastermind, when they go to a networking session, that they're able to like see somebody, talk to somebody, and be like, you have to talk to Dean, you have to talk to Kevin. Like there's a clear picture. And Armando, I love what you brought up. Like, are they going to be able to know if this person makes $5 million or $10 million in revenue a year? Probably not. There's probably certain attributes that you can plant in your referral partner's head that are really easy to remember. And a lot of times that easy to remember comes with that dichotomy of like, this is what we do and this is what we don't do. So they can really see a clearer picture. We call it the big four, which is like what you do, who you serve, what you don't do, and who you don't serve. So like that way you are getting the best referral possible from somebody. Nobody's wasting their time, right? Like if you only work with X type of attorney but in your conversation you're like, I work with attorneys. Well, you didn't specify that enough for them, and now they're passing off referrals that you actually can't help. That feels awkward. How do you like so really being intentional about that is really what we focus on. And then I also was starting to I like the chat. I'm quicker to think sometimes with my fingers than I am to unmute. But I was also typing out that this idea of like talking to referral partners and getting them on board rather than clients. We use the analogy all the time. It's like building a fishing fleet to go out there and fish for you. Like that's a lot better than going ahead and like standing on the end of the dock and just trying to catch one fish at a time. So I love that strategy. I think podcasting really brings that to life if you're able to talk to those higher level people that can then go out and fish on your behalf.
Yeah, heck yeah. Here's something, and it might be beneficial for those of you um, that haven't yet started the podcast. We have a client who is a fractional CMO for attorneys, and we've been, we're handling his podcast logistics in terms of inviting people to his podcast, and the thing that I think he finally understood today was that unless the podcast is formed and it's a real thing, it's going to be very difficult to invite people to it, especially if they don't know him, right? So, my advice to you is if you're starting a podcast, to invite people that you already know to the podcast so that it is an established podcast. Because it's going to be very difficult for you to get influential people to come on and spend time with you if they think that it's just some fly by night operation, right? So my advice is, and that's why this group exists, is to invite people here on this, on this podcast community. I also have a bunch of people that are looking to get on podcasts. So if you're looking to like start your podcast, you haven't done it yet, and you're just like, oh, I don't really know who I would invite, you're gonna give us epilepsy. Um, but if you don't know who to invite, build it first, right? Just do it. Invite people make it a thing. Then once it's 10, 15 episodes in, then we can start inviting people and then it'll be in flow. So keep that in mind too. This will work for you, but out of the gate, if you're trying to like close deals, with the podcast and that's the thing, like it's just there's a disconnect, right? And once again, that's not what we're doing it, right? We want to build the authority, the trust, these referral partnerships. We want to build the brand. Once that's built and once you have the trust and the credibility, it's going to be a lot easier to get people to the podcast, and it's going to be a lot easier to convert some of these guests either into referral partnerships or into actual customers.
I was going to add to that. So when my first podcast, before I started reaching out and filling in good people to bring on, I just did some solo pod. Regular ones was hour and a half, depending on who I was talking to, and then I would do like little 15 or 30-minute ones by myself on the niche that I'm focused in. So that one, I've got episodes going, but I've also got stuff that I can use for social, and I already have talking head style stuff that people are going, "Oh, he's on a podcast. It's my podcast, but yeah, sure, whatever it looks like, I'm on a podcast."
Yeah. And to add to that, if you feel uncomfortable, right, being by yourself and talking into a camera, what you could do, and I've said this before, figure out what your niche is, figure out what book you would write, right? Like, and you can go to AI real quick and go, "Hey, this is my niche. This is what I want to talk about. I would love to write a book about this subject." And then ask AI to give you the table of contents for that book, and then take the table of contents, make those questions, and then have somebody that you know ask you in a podcast format those questions and let you wax philosophical about that. Then you can take the transcript, because it's your words, and start writing your book.
And it's good enough you could even have AI ask you the question.
And then, yeah, and then you can have AI ask you the questions as well. Right. But I mean, for me, I love the interaction with a person. So it's, it makes it easy for me to answer questions if somebody's asking me. So it's something that, something to consider.
I have a question about that. Why don't you offer it as a business offering for your podcast business, Armando, and say, hey, if you are scared of doing this alone, we'll offer you a host who asks you these questions. Just give me the questions, and then it's another way that you can serve your clients.
We do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an offer for sure. Yeah. So I mean, we either do that virtually or we do it in person, right? So so when people are scared and they got the head trash, right? The first 3 months of creating content is always the most nerve-wracking. So we offer that for sure. It's like, okay, we're gonna hold your hand through this process, and here's some actors that are gonna ask you the questions and make it look like you're on a podcast. So we absolutely do that. Well, and our first touch, right? Because we're doing the podcast as a first touch, they get to experience that with Dean, Megan, myself, Will, Macy, who I just hired, and those are like I'm treating it kind of like the Daily Show. So I have different hosts for the podcast, and then they get to see what it feels like to work with us. And then, like I said, the help conversation right after that is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
But I appreciate that. Thank you.
Can I share my screen?
Yeah.
Armando. I was just going to show you this another cool part of the podcast that I incorporate into. Can you see my screen here?
Yep.
So this was just today. So 2 hours ago and 2 hours ago, I did two back to back today. So this is a truck accident lawyer who owns her own firm, and then this is the doctor who has the big network of referral partners. But I got tons of these, right? And I got like Ben Glass, Ken Hardison. If you're in the legal space, I got some of the most well-known lawyers in the country that have left comments like this. For one, you can leverage this, use this. And then when I get a new client that goes to look at our reviews, they're like, holy smokes, like, some of these, like everyone knows these people. So and we ask for this right as they come off the podcast, right? And I would say it's about 90% that we get a 5-star review. And this is on my agency profile, but not many agencies have 125 5-star reviews. So it's, but again, you can go through these and like, there's just, it's awesome. So we can use that. I got Mike McAllowitz and other like well-known people that have done it as well. So it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, I love that. Here's a little thing that I do. I will, and I've actually used your Google reviews to create a prospecting list. Just letting you know. So if you guys are looking, for prospecting tools, if you guys are looking for prospecting tools, what I would recommend is part of it is to go to some podcasts or people that you respect, right? Influencers in the space. Go to their Google My Business page and look at the people that are leaving the reviews, because those tend to be good prospects, right? For either referral partnerships or people to bring on the podcast. So, and then you talk to your referral partner, right? That says, "Hey, Kevin, I would love to meet blah, 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 so and so, so and so, so and so, so and so. Can you make the connection?" And he'll go, "Yeah, absolutely."
That's a good idea right there.
Yeah, man. It's,
I'll have people reach out all the time and go, "Hey, Kevin, this is happening like every day almost. I see you're connected to this person on LinkedIn. How well do you know them, and can you connect me?" And I'm like, I have no clue who they are.
yeah,
But someone that left you a review, pretty darn sure you know who they are. So
right. So, yeah, reach out to them. And like I said, once again, if you know your niche, you can go straight to those people, right? Ken Hardison, who runs PILMA, the Personal Injury Legal Marketing Association conference. Just go to his conference. Everybody that's there becomes a freaking prospect, right? Like it's not hard. It's really not hard. And Dean was on, Dean was on the sales call today, and he saw it, and it was just like, it's just so easy. So easy.
I
So
like what we were saying earlier. It's like we're not having a sales call. Here's what I offer. Let's see if it works for you and what we can do.
pretty much it. Pretty much it. So the KPI, the key performance indicator, is to do 2 podcasts a week. If you can do more, I would recommend it. But do 2. At least 2 a week, right? Kevin over here does 5 a day. Okay.
I did 2 today.
Yeah, but if you guys want to grow fast, I would recommend it. Put the system into place and just do it. Implementation is the key to growth in your business. And it's all predictable. Why? Because humans are predictable. They just,
Yeah, I have 4 this week actually. So
heck yeah.
it's a numbers game. The more people I talk to and meet, the more reviews I get, the more referrals you get, the more opportunities you get.
All day, every day. And then hit up Shantae and get some PR rolling. And really,
Actually, can I share a different resource that came through to me
sure.
through so you mentioned strategic coach in something, a back and forth.
Oh.
So I follow Dan Sullivan. I love his work. And he's written all those books with Dr. Benjamin Hardy. If you guys have written or read Who Not How, 10x is better than 2x. So Benjamin Hardy, he sent me his book, his audiobook, in advance of it launching next month, the actual book. If you guys want, I can share the link to listen to that. And it's called The Science of Scaling.
Oh, cool.
And it doubles down on that 10x is better than 2x theory, where it helps you go through a process of refining the actual things that you should be doing. And he says most people set goals that are too small. So being a $2 million company is actually stagnation when it comes to all the things you should be doing. Focused effort would mean you set the goal of being 50 million. That's one of his examples. But like for good news, I got the book from him last week, and I think he was just hitting up a bunch of people in LinkedIn, and he was going through it. Like we're doing a whole blitz this Thursday on good news because our North Star is going to be a SaaS product. And what we thought was, well, we'll build it to like 100 million, when actuality, our goal should be 1 billion. If we look at the marketplace. And so that means our indicators, like how we're growing, needs to be with the $1 billion idea in mind. And that means way more focus. So if you guys are interested, I could drop the link I got.
Love that. Love it.
It's wide open. It's the whole audiobook. You have to wait to purchase the physical book. But if you like Dan Sullivan, if you like Benjamin Hardy, I really have enjoyed the book. It's an easy listen. It's crazy good.
Yeah, yeah. In closing, I'm actually moving my office. I'm moving to another space. And I'm going to be in Cabo on Thursday. And my project manager, who's Melanie, I said, I need you guys to move my office to my new place. Well, don't you want me? Shouldn't you be around for this? And I'm like, absolutely not. Well, who's going to do it? I said, you guys can figure it out. How much does it cost? Get it this done. You know, when I return from Cabo, I want to be rolling into the new space. It doesn't need to be set up. I just need everything out of this studio into the new studio. Who, not how, right? Like, let's get out of the thought process that we have to be the one to do it, right? Like, as Shantae is talking and she's like obviously knows all of her shit, there is absolutely no freaking way that I'm ever going to sit and try to figure out what she already knows when I could just go, hey, how much does it cost? Let's just roll with that and you guys handle it. And then you're 30 steps ahead instead of 2, 3 steps ahead, right? So just hire it out. Who, not how, every time, every time. So anywho, thank you guys for being here. Appreciate you. I'm gonna have this on the recap email. The directory is in here. I'm also gonna send the directory again in an email so that you guys can fill it out. Put all your information in so that we can have you in the directory so that you guys can go in and go, okay, so and so is here, so and so is there. And gonna keep building value. Like I said, I think the new format's gonna be bringing in people to talk, for 30 minutes like Shantae did, because I thought that was phenomenal, right? And then we'll end with some hot seats and and some cool things. So, sound good? All right, guys. Thank you guys so much. We'll talk soon.